Good afternoon, folks. This is Sasha from Lung Transplant Nation. Hope you are doing well. In this conversation, I'm talking to a gentleman who has had two double lung transplants. Now, I did not misspeak. I said two double lung transplants in the span of 2 years. It is a very, very interesting and powerful conversation. I will introduce him. His name is Paul, and you'll get to see what he has to say and what he had to go through. He, when he was born, he had cystic fibrosis all his life, but it was manageable until it became unmanageable. Please like and subscribe to Lung Transplant Nation YouTube channel and also on Instagram, so I can keep providing you with some good conversational series. Thank you. I got Mr. Paul Thibodeaux. Now, his case is very unique, and I really want you to listen to it because I don't want to reveal everything at first. But he had a double lung transplant back in 2015, right, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So, and from what I know from him, he had cystic fibrosis pretty much all his life.
Correct.
So,
It's genetic.
okay, so there you go. So now I'm going to introduce you to Paul, and he's basically going to tell us his story, from as far as like he wants to go back, how he was feeling until 2015, that doctors say, hey, we need to do something else than what we've been doing. So Paul, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was born with cystic fibrosis. When I was born, the reason they found out I had CF was because I was born, I had a blockage around my intestine. And back in 1982, they didn't test babies like they do now for CF. Mm-hmm. So a blockage would be one of the first things they test you for, would be CF, because that's normally what the problem was. Mm-hmm. I had an ileostomy done when I was less than 2 days old, which they reversed a week later. My parents were told at that time that the life expectancy was 12 years old. My parents said that if I was going to live to be 12, they were going to let me be a normal kid. So they let me play sports and do everything I could. And my doctors think that that's what helped me stay so healthy so long. Okay. Because I have a lot of friends with CF who was sick from childhood and were always sick, had transplants early. I was really healthy. I played sports through high school. Then I got out, began working. I was a police officer for 19 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I didn't really start getting sick until my late 20s. Is when I started feeling the loss of breath, and just it started hitting me hard. I could tell it wasn't going the right way. Mm-hmm. My doctors finally decided that it was time to put me on oxygen. So I was on oxygen kind of as needed at first. Mm-hmm. I would use it when I was out of breath or I was gonna walk a lot. But then it quickly grew to 24/7.
Wow.
Then my doctors were talking to me about getting put on the list. And when you're growing up with CF, you know that's eventually where it's gonna go. Mm-hmm. Eventually gonna need a transplant. It's inevitable. So they started doing the test to put me on the list. It's as you know, quite a few tests. It takes a couple of weeks. Yep. When I did the test, I was so bad that my doctors told me I was number 2 on the list already.
Oh, wow.
So I waited till I got my transplant. It was about 5 months the first time, but I had 2 dry runs in between there. One of them, I just went in and they did an IV, and then they decided they couldn't use them. The second one, they said it was very rare, because I actually got all the way into the operating room, was intubated. They were about to start cutting on me when they got the call that they had to stop because the lungs weren't gonna work. They weren't holding oxygen. Wow. So I woke up in recovery, intubated, everything, and I looked down. I remember waking up and looking down, and there's no bandages, no nothing on my chest. So I was confused. I didn't know what happened.
Mhm.
And finally, once I was fully aware, they told me what happened. That one was the worst one because that's really disheartening, for something like that.
So yeah, let me ask you, because I myself, I'm a double lung transplant recipient. I had 6 dry runs. So after
Yeah,
the 4th one, I'm like, "Well, whatever." But I never got to the point where they actually went into surgery, but they did all the blood work. I mean,
yeah.
they took like 25 vials of
Oh
blood,
yeah.
and then you spend like what, you can't eat for like 12 hours because I was hospitalized. I don't know about you, but I was hospitalized beforehand for I was hospitalized for 2.5 months before I
I
got.
wasn't.
Okay,
No,
yeah. So
I
I was
got the car and had to drive there.
okay. So once that didn't happen on your second dry run, did they send you home, or did they just keep you at the
Yeah,
hospital?
sent me home.
Or they sent you home, and you was
Oh,
obviously you were still on oxygen.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so at the time, were you doing 20? You said you were doing 24/7 oxygen. Do you remember
Yeah.
how many liters were you on by any chance?
4.
Okay, you were 4 liter. Okay. So were you able to still perform your duty as an officer,
Oh
or
no, I had
okay,
before I even got out. Once I was on oxygen 24/7,
that was it.
I had to get out.
That
Um,
was it. Yeah.
yeah. So, but my job said, look, if you could come back after, your spot could be here.
That's wonderful, because just to give you a little background on me, I got into corrections. I was a corrections officer at
Okay.
Rikers Island, but very late in life. I just mid the cutoff. I had applied, and then 3 years later, they called me. I'm like, corrections? I was like, oh my God. So long story short, I was there in my like 40 years old. I started late. I went through the whole process, but within a year and a half, started to get sick. I got
Yeah.
pretty bad, and that was my demise. So yeah, so I know I couldn't go back. That's why I was asking you, how was your relationship with your job. So please proceed. So after they send you back home, and what happened? How long did you have to wait
The
again?
next one, I don't remember exactly how long, but when I actually got the call and I had the transplant, it was fairly quick after the second one.
Oh, okay.
Between the getting put on the list and the first dry run, and between the first dry run and the second was a lot of time. But
Okay.
between that bad one, that second one, and the actual transplant was fairly quick.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to wait that long, because it depends what part of the country you are. It depends on,
Yeah.
your body size, your blood type, and so forth and so on. Because I know people that wait for like a year and a half, 2 years to wait
Oh
for.
yeah.
And I know people, the next week,
Yeah.
you find a match. So it's
Yep.
a,
I know a guy who was less than 24 hours.
yes. I heard of somebody, so I'm like, oh, good. I'll be scared though if it was me. In 24 hours, there will be
Yeah.
time to process the whole thing. But
Yeah, because it's weird. It's because you have so many emotions, because you're excited because you need it.
yeah,
You're not gonna survive if you need it, but you're terrified at the same time because they tell you the numbers, especially for lungs, is the worst. The numbers are the worst ones, and so it's like, okay, look, I'm either gonna die slow and just horrible, or I gotta try this.
yeah, absolutely. I totally feel you, because I was surprised to hear that lung transplant is like the most complex out of all the transplant,
Yeah.
from heart, liver, kidney, whatever. Lung transplant is the most delicate, the most complex one. So yeah, you're right. It's one of those things that, it's like, okay, you need it. And when you feel like, okay, I was on the wait list, and then they're like, okay, we might have a possible match. I was like, oh crap, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, it just comes over. It's only human. It just comes
Yeah,
over.
and a lot of people, like, they don't realize it until they get sick and they need it.
Yeah.
Like, I've known it my whole life and it still was like terrifying.
Yeah, because yes, it's funny you said that, because it's one thing to know you got to do something. It's one
Yeah.
thing when it's up on you. It's like, oh man, really? So okay, so once you get that call back again, and I'm sure you still had a lot of hopes,
Oh yeah.
so what else was going through your mind, like with regards to your family, your loved ones? Like, what was the process? I mean, I know they know you had an issue,
Oh
but
yeah.
through this time.
My family knew how severe my disease was my whole life.
Mhm.
My parents never hid how bad it was from me or from anybody. So as a kid, I knew what
That's
the life
wonderful.
expectancy was.
Yeah, that's
So
wonderful.
I tell everybody, I'm like, look, growing up, knowing that, I think you go one or two ways. You either want a pity party all the time and you want people to wait on you, or you grow up with a chip on your shoulder,
Yeah,
and you're gonna prove to everybody that you could beat it.
yeah.
And I went that way. That's the way I grew up. My parents wouldn't let me throw a pity party. They would have not had that.
And let me tell you, man, from watching your Instagram page, man, listen, I got so much respect, so much pride for you,
Thank you.
because it's you're absolutely right. The mental part is so is such a intricate part of it, because I belong to Facebook group, I belong to different transplant
So do
group.
I.
You could tell some people like, and I'm like, I'm trying not to fall into that, no, this is a chance for me to, live,
Yeah.
life, to have a second chance. So I'm really gonna try to do my best for myself, for my family, for my loved ones. I owe myself that one. So,
Yeah.
so that's a great attitude to go into. Absolutely, absolutely. So,
So,
mhm.
yeah, so then I had the transplant. I got my call. I went in and I actually had the transplant. And I remember waking up. I remember looking down and I saw the bandages and stuff. And I was like, all right, we got it. We did it. And when you wake up, you're still intubated, as you know.
Mhm.
And some people say that the tube bothers them and all. I really didn't feel it. I just couldn't talk. So they extubated me pretty quickly. And I mean, less than 24 hours after I was extubated, my doctor wanted me out that bed.
Oh,
He
wow.
wanted me in the chair next to the bed. He wanted me getting up, moving around, because he said the only thing you're going to do in that bed is catch pneumonia or something else, and we're gonna have to deal with that later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I still remember when they extubated me, taking that first deep breath. And it's like you just think like, man, people breathe like this all the time. Like, this is normal.
Yeah.
Because growing up with CF, you never have a normal lung function.
Okay. Okay.
So,
That's good to know.
from
Yeah.
birth, you're already on the decline.
Yeah.
So it's eye-opening to see what other people normally breathe and all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Some people take for granted.
Oh, listen, absolutely. Listen, I totally hear you. For me, because I was on oxygen for 5, 6 years. So even though I didn't have CF going up, but once I had breathing issues, my breathing declined. And yeah, post-transplant, it was like,
Let it dog out.
yeah, sure, no problem. It was like, kind of, I had to learn how to breathe again. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was kind of scary, it's like, it was hard. But then again, it's, I always tell people that, hey, you get affected different ways. You know what I mean? Because I had a hard recovery. I still stayed in the hospital for another 6 weeks. Post-transplant, I had ECMO. I don't know if you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I had ECMO. It damaged my right leg, so it took me a while. Even still, I'm wearing like a knee brace, just to
Okay.
support the leg. So we each have our own different ways about it. Like I know some people like not exactly the next day, but in a few days they're about to get up. For me, it took like a high walker, 3, 4
Yeah.
different,
I've seen a lot of people that
yeah,
had
to
to
kind
use
of try to
that.
even
Yeah.
get me up. So we all have different experiences. But what I try to do before transplant is to do, pulmonary rehab, to work out, because that's one thing that's key, man. I don't care how old you are, you need to be in the best shape that you can be.
I agree
And then
100%.
that helps you so much in your recovery, which I know
Yeah.
it did for you. So go ahead.
Yeah.
So once you start getting out of bed, how
So I
long?
was walking around the ward in the next couple of days, and I have like a nurse or one of my family members would carry my boxes from my chest tube drains. And I'd walk around a little bit and then go sit back down, do that a few times a day. And my doctor was amazing. I cannot say anything bad about my doctor. He's wonderful. And I'm in New Orleans, so I was at Ochsner in New Orleans, and Dr. Rampolo was my doctor, and he was wonderful. And I ended up getting released from the hospital between a week and a half and 2 weeks after my transplant. But I lived a little too far. You had to live within 30 minutes of the hospital when you get released. If not, you had to live at these apartments that were right next to the hospital for the first 2 to 3 months, just to out that really severe window. So I moved into apartments because I lived about an hour away.
Okay. That makes sense, because post-transplant, there's a lot of tests. They got to see you,
Yeah,
quite
they should be
often.
like every day, every other day. Like it's a lot. So when I got there, they have a big levee that runs behind the hospital. So I started walking a mile a day.
Oh, wow.
Every day I would walk a mile, and you know, it wasn't fast, but
No, hey,
and every day, and it was in the
build it up.
summertime. So if you know anything about the summer in New Orleans, it's hot and
Gosh,
humid.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, I've been
And
over that many times. I'm like the humidity and
yeah, so I did that. Then I upped it to a mile and a half, and then I quickly upped it to 2 miles. And then at 12 weeks post transplant, I was clear to start lifting weights. They said start out slow, and then as long as you don't feel any pain, you don't feel anything, you could keep going up, you know, like normal.
wow.
So I found a CrossFit gym that was about a mile down from my hospital. So I'll walk a mile three times a week. I'd walk a mile down there, work out for an hour, then walk a mile back. The other few days a week, I just walk 2 miles. Did that till I got released. I think it was like 2.5 months about after I got released to finally go home. And when I went home, I went back to my normal traditional weightlifting gym, and that's how I rehabbed. I never went to you know, a pulmonary rehab or a physical therapist or nothing. I just rehabbed myself.
Wow.
Because I know I'm not everybody is, but I'm very highly self-motivated. I don't need anybody to tell me, you know, I need to do something, which is it's just something I like, because you know, it's, you don't want to have to rely on people. So you already, especially when you're growing up with a terminal illness, you already have to rely on people for a lot of stuff. You know, you don't want to burden them with even more. So I like the fact that I'm very self-motivated.
Which is great, because I think that really gonna give you the leg up on things, because like you said, you've been, you know, sick your whole life and you know what it is. So you really built that grit within you.
Yeah.
You know, that you know, you want to, you have to, and that is awesome. So your medical team didn't have any issue with you, quote unquote, going to the gym and work out. Now, obviously, we're talking about pre-COVID.
Yeah, way people pre-COVID. So I actually, for the first year, pretty much, I wore a VOG mask. It's like a medical mask. It's like a cloth. It has a filter on it.
Yeah.
I wore a VOG mask for for about the first year when I was in public.
Okay, yeah. So just limit your exposure, you know. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and
Because
it's funny because back then everybody looked at me like I was crazy. Now they're like
yeah.
moving and all. But you know, I did that, and I got back to being a police officer, full-fledged like street cop, in 9 months.
Oh wow. Oh,
They told me they told me that the recovery is going to be about a year,
yeah.
if ever, and I got back in 9 months.
Wow.
And I got back on the SWAT team. I got back, did everything, and
Oh,
then I was doing wonderful, man. I was doing great. I couldn't believe it.
I mean,
You know?
listen, I'm just in awe of your determination, because that is so key. I'm just in awe of your determination, your will, because that is the key. I mean, that is the key. So, okay, so you were right back in, you know, on feet and everything else.
Yeah, and then I was doing great, you know, still going to the gym, doing everything. And then one day I got in a foot pursuit with a suspect, and I got winded really fast. And I was like, all right, that's not normal. That something's wrong. So I called my doctor the next day, and he told me to come in. And when I went in, my lung function had dropped 20%.
Oh wow,
okay. So they started looking and seeing, and they figured I had some kind of bacterial infection or something like that. So this is about a year post-transplant this happened. And so they tried doing IV antibiotics, tried doing IV steroids. Nothing was working. I was still dropping dramatically. Okay. They decided, before trying to put me on the transplant list again, they were going to try something called photophoresis. They put a port in my chest, like a lot of people have for chemo and stuff like that. You have a port they put in your chest. It's the same port. And what they would do, basically how they explained it to me, they'd pull around a pint of blood out my body. They would go in this machine, and they do like, it's some kind of like light chemo treatment that would happen to it, and it would pump back into me.
Wow.
And I did that. It's a 6-month process, and you have to do it at first. you do it like every couple of days, then
Mhm.
it goes to like once a week, and then it gradually gets further apart for the entire time.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So Paul, I wanted to focus basically on a little bit, if you don't mind. Um, you had your double lung transplant like less than a year ago, right? And then you felt that, you're out of breath,
Mhm.
you know, doing your job, as a police officer. And then when they check it, they find out your numbers went down by 20%.
Yeah.
So what did, besides what you explained, that they put the tube and everything
Yeah.
else, but what was it that they felt is going wrong?
They said I caught some kind of bacterial infection that is completely normal. People have it all the time. It never affects people. You could get it anywhere. You could get it in your own house. You could get it at Walmart. You could get anywhere you go. It's just something that's readily normal. It doesn't hurt people. But for some reason, they don't know why, these lungs did not like that bacterial infection.
Was that CMV by any chance?
Um,
Cyclo,
it may have been.
yeah, because that's a common one. That's the reason I'm saying it.
Yeah,
It's a common one. I know a lot of my transplant recipient
it
people
may have been, I think.
have it.
And,
Okay.
but yeah, like that's why they tried antibiotics and it just didn't work. My lung function still dropped. They tried steroids, didn't work. They said that normally they could clear it up, with one of those two.
Yeah, yeah.
It just wouldn't. For some reason, those lungs just did not like that.
Wow.
That virus or bacterial infection or whatever it classified as.
Yeah.
And it just kept tearing my lungs down. And like I went from, I think when I was at my best, I was like right at 100% lung function. And by the time they started the photophoresis, I think I was about 20% lung function. It was dropping quick.
Yeah.
Like really fast. And that all happened in a few months. It's like 2-3 months.
Wow. Okay, so the doctors felt like, hey, listen, if this is keep going, the best thing for us to do for you is to release you. That's
Well, yeah, they want to do the photophoresis to see if it would help reverse it, but at best, if it could at least stop the decline,
stabilize it, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So I can, make it to another transplant if if we came to that.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So what were your feelings at the time? What were people around you? What telling?
It's a combination of things, I think. At one point, it's like you're thinking, it's like, geez, man, like what I have to do?
Can't catch a break, huh? Can't catch a break.
Give me a break, man.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like I was like, okay, if we got to do this again, I got this. I know the process. I know how to do this. I'm not worried about it. If we go do it, let's do it. Let's start this.
Okay.
So it's like a combination of being like aggravated and
pissed off.
And yeah, pissed and just ready to go at the same time. It's a weird combination of feelings you're going through.
So what was happening in your life at that time? So I'm assuming you were not on the force anymore, I would assume.
So once I started the photophoresis and I had to come back, get back out of law enforcement. And so I was just home, and I drive there, every so often. I would either drive, my dad would drive me, but I had oxygen. I couldn't walk 3 feet with oxygen on at that time and not be out of breath.
Wow.
It was the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. It was worse than before the first one.
Wow. Because I guess you were kind of, some way, used to it growing up.
Yeah.
It deteriorated, but it was a gradual, right? It was a gradual step.
Yeah, it's like all at once this time.
Yeah. All at once, it's like, whoa, what's going on?
And before my transplant, I found that the oxygen helped. Like if I would get into a really bad spell or I really couldn't breathe, I could turn up the oxygen a little bit for a second or two and then turn it back down. And I was able to at least catch my breath and be back to my normal.
Yeah.
But with the second time when I got sick again, I didn't feel like the oxygen helped as much. I could crank that thing up all I want, and it really didn't feel like my lungs were just getting the oxygen.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it is a little worse feeling, you know, a little more worried. Like,
Mhm.
you know, it's like, man, what's it gonna do if the oxygen don't work? What's gonna happen?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Okay. I totally hear you. All right. So, all right. So let's um let's get into once you were listed again for a second time.
Okay.
And
Um, well,
and
right
how,
before that, actually, when
how
I was getting tested to get on the list, I they were doing a heart echo as one of the tests,
Mhm.
and something happened with, and oxygen was came into my chest cavity and collapsed both of my lungs, and I stopped breathing.
Oh my God.
So then they threw me in a wheelchair and rushed me down to the ER so they could do emergency chest tubes.
Oh
So I
God.
remember being sitting on the table in radiology doing a heart echo, and the next thing I know, I wake up in ICU with chest tubes and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah,
So they had to inflate the lungs back again.
yeah, uh-huh.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, you've been to your fair share for sure. That's for sure. Okay. So all right. So you went for an X-ray. Next thing you know, you're up in ICU. This is insane. So then tell me what happened next.
So I wake up and I was actually released like the next day or day after. They were able to take out the chest tubes and everything, and I was released.
Mhm.
Uh, and then, you know, I was back to what my normal was at the time, being on oxygen, being out of breath and all. And I finished all the tests to get relisted for a second double lung transplant.
Wow. 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 Uh, all right. Now take me to your take me to your mindset and those around you, your loved ones. Like, what are people thinking? What are people saying? Because I mean, I can only assume that it must have been a very stressful. I mean, you might have been, okay, I'm a fighter of my life and so forth and so on, but those that are around you that love you, I mean, it must have been kind of hard on them too, huh?
And you know, they didn't they didn't really burden me or stress me out with what they were feeling. They just,
Which is beautiful. Which is
yeah,
beautiful.
they I guess they would talk amongst themselves, and
Yeah,
you know, I
yeah,
know it was rough on them, you know, talking to them after, especially, you know, after everything, you know,
yeah.
I'm helping out, you know, talking to them, and, you know, it's rough on them, but at the time, I think their mindset was they didn't want to add any more stress to me than it was already
Mm,
on me.
mm.
You know, so they, you know, they handled it in their own way, and they didn't really try to stress me out about how they were feeling.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. That is because one thing I realize, we need that support, man,
Oh
especially
yeah.
in those in between times. We need that support. We don't need stress. We
Yeah,
need,
and I have an amazing family. I love my family.
and that is awesome. God bless, because that is a key component. You gotta have the support, because you're in there, man. You're basically fighting for your life here. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
So and people will have to be unselfishly pause as much as they can in their lives to really
Hmm.
love and support you and do the things that they do for you. And that is an amazing thing. That's something I'm always
Oh
grateful
yeah,
for. I'm always thankful for. You know what I mean? I'm always
definitely.
thankful for.
You know,
So okay, so now you are relisted. Did they give you more or less kind of a timeline, or is it just like, okay, let's see what's going on?
no, they did tell me that on a second run, the numbers are even worse. The
Oh,
survival numbers are way worse. Um, you know, it's already bad enough with lungs, and then when you go on in and they tell you, okay, it's gonna be worse than the first time. The numbers are worse. The chance of survival and thriving is a lot worse.
mhm.
But it's funny at the same time. I'm like, in my head, I was like, look, just give me the transplant.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could do this. I've done it before. I could do it again. Just give me the transplant.
yeah. I mean, at some point, I think you're probably saying to yourself, "What else do I have to lose?" I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I'm in it. I'm in it, and I'm a fighter, and I'm going to keep fighting. And that's really a great attitude to have, because let me tell you something. You hear some sad stories, from other people that, it's, for whatever reason, didn't have the fight in them, and that cost them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you really, your sense of your mental aspect, you got to be positive, you got to be strong, and you got to be willing to fight, man. I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, I feel like something like this is very important. So And obviously they can't give you a timeline. This is just the numbers are really
Yeah,
working.
but they did tell me that my numbers were so bad this time that I was number one on the list right away.
So that's what I was gonna, that's what I thought. That would
Yeah,
kick you.
I was
It would
number
kick
one.
you, yeah, kick you right back. Because I remember at some point I was like number two. You know, I got so bad I was number two on the list, and then eventually, yeah. Okay. So so that's good to know. And now I'm assuming it's the same hospital that
Yeah, same hospital, same doctors.
Exactly. That's okay, because they're familiar with your case, because that's definitely something you want to keep that continuity.
Yeah, and my doctor had to fight to get me back on the list.
Mm,
You know, they have a board. You got to go and the doctors got to go and present your case, and you know, and they got to okay it or not. And my doctor had to fight to get me for them to let me get put back on the list.
which is pretty interesting. So I guess I mean this is like getting behind the curtain, things that we ourselves don't know. But I mean I can assume there's so many calculations that goes into it too for them.
Yeah.
Yes, you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're
So,
trying to figure out like if you get them, will you survive, or should we give them to this person who has a better chance of surviving? You know.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy. But unfortunately, that's part of life.
Yeah.
And I think you've shown a resiliency, to fight to get better. And I think that only helped you. Absolutely. I mean, we try not to think about these things, but I think decision like that, when it comes to life and death and so forth and so on, some people have to make those tough calls. And I think it's our job. I mean, like patients.
Yeah.
Need to really make it hard for them not to make that decision for us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You say no.
Exactly. That is so awesome.
Well, my doctor told me, my working out is why I was even had a chance to get a second transplant. He said if I wasn't in good shape whenever I got sick, that I wouldn't even have been alive to have a second transplant.
You see, there you go. And then trust me, man, I'm trying. I got a Peloton here on a treadmill, and I got a couple of kettlebell, but I really need to step up my game, man, because that is so important. And you're really inspiring me. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a little break right now. Part two, I really want you to talk to us about, once you got the call again for the second, double lung transplant. I mean, it's been a roller coaster for you, but man, you're looking great. So, it looks like things are working out well. So, I'll let's go for part two. Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed the first part of my conversation with Paul. Please like and subscribe, and check out part two. This is where he discusses his second double lung transplant.